Hello everyone, welcome to another series of lecture on classical and contemporary Marxist thought. In this lecture, I will try to introduce to you uh, another thinker, and that is Charles Fourier. So the full name of Charles Fourier is Francis Mary Charles Fourier. So Charles Fourier, just like Saint Simon, is another French socialist and philosopher born at a place known as Besancon on April 7th, 1772, and he died in Paris on October 10th, 1837. So, a very important aspect of Charles Fourier is that he advocated for the reconstruction of society based on the theory of what is known as passional attraction, or the theory based on the idea of passion and how this passion, individuals' passion actually gets attracted to one another, and in the process therefore it lead to social harmony. So basically what Charles Fourier insisted upon was that natural passion of man would, if properly channeled, result in social harmony. Charles Fourier is someone who believed that he had discovered the law of social interactions as compared to Newton's law of motion. He makes this argument to say that if Newton has discovered the law of motion, I have discovered the law of God for man, and that is the law of passional attraction, the law of passional attraction, which will lead to social interaction, and social interaction that will lead to social harmony. So, of course, Charles Fourier has written mountains of books and articles and so on and so forth. But many says many say that his sources of ideas are obscure, and to a great extent he was considered as an autodidact, or rather a self-taught person, and therefore his ideas sometimes they are very utopian in nature, and at times they are also crazy, because Saint Simon, in some of his writings he says that I will he will make an effort to tame wild animals to become domesticated animals. He also developed the ideas, so to say, that he will convert the salty water in the ocean into lemonade, so that people can drink from it at any point of time when they feel thirsty, and when they are experiencing heat around the environment. So so therefore, as I said, his sources are considered as obscure, and at the same time, many people think that he is also crazy in many ways. He has no methodology, he has no scientific approach with regard to many of his ideas. So basically his inclination was to become in his early days, his inclination was to become a military engineer. But having come from a family, a wealthy merchant family, he was forced to take up trade in Marseilles. So right from very early age, he apprenticed himself as a tradesman, from the age of 6. Although later years he realized that he never liked it, and he saw trade itself as very boring and full of vices or immoral practices. Of course, but despite all these dislike, when his father passed away, and in view of the the kind of inheritance document that was handed over to him, he had to for some time occupy himself with trade, and he got himself into textile trade in the beginning of his career. In 18 in 1799, his business anyway suffered a setback. One because because he was forced to take up this job, and therefore he was not prepared for it. And another thing is because he was not interested in it at all, and so therefore because of that he was forced to take up the job of a civil servant in Lyons. However, in 1816, he inherited an income from his mother, and since then he finally devoted himself entirely to his writing. He was very passionate about writing. So in 1823, he settled permanently in Paris, and in his place he left a large body of published writings, as well as many manuscripts which were unpublished. So this is basically the background from where Charles Fourier came. Charles Fourier had developed a fundamental insight, which was the basis of his later work, which he called as the calculus of mechanism of the passion. The calculus of the mechanism of the passion. So the calculus here certainly refers to an interactive system of the kind of passion that he would be talking about. According to Charles Fourier, there are about there are certain passion which were based on senses, which were based on what he called as spiritual spirit, and which were based on what he called as distributive passion, which can be distributed, which can be shared with others. And therefore that ensured this calculus as an interactive system ensured that the gratification and the equilibrium of all human passion, and also facilitated the formation of the passionate souris, which was the theoretical foundation of his community that he desired to, he envisioned to have to form, known as the phalanx, Phalanx, or phalanxes, which was Fourier's utopian association, or which was Fourier's utopian form of community to experiment his ideas, and also to experiment his desires of bringing about social harmony through the use of these, as I said, through the use of these passions. Fourier set forth his ideas in his first article, which was entitled as Universal Harmony, which was published in a journal known as Bulletin de Lyon in 1803. Thereafter, he published, as I said, many other books, articles, manuscripts, and of course there were also other manuscripts which he could never published. Some of those are, let me name some of those books. The first one was Theory of the Four Movements and General Destinies, which was published in 1808. Then the Treatise on Domestic and Agricultural Association in 2 volumes, which he published in 1822. Then False Industry, Divided, Disgusting, unlying and its antidote. Again, this also in two volumes which he published in 1835 and 1837, a year before he died. Of course, although Fourier wrote in a bizarre, as I said, in a very bizarre and often incomprehensible style, and also he incorporated many eccentric ideas, as I told you, his desire to tame wild animals like tigers and others into making them into domesticated animal, then turning the ocean into lemonade. All these are kind of bizarre and eccentric ideas. Yet he gradually gained some coterie or disciples or group of disciples, and by 1820, Charles Fourier had some substantial following already. So, this is his background, and from the way Charles Fourier actually evolved himself, we can say that Charles Fourier was primarily a capitalist whose personal experience actually made him realize about the sensitivity to the social plagues or to the social problems, the vices of civilization, as well as the corrupt practices, especially in terms of trade. So all these actually made Charles Fourier very concerned about the way the society was moving, and therefore he believed that since all these crises are in existence, the society was in constant contradiction with itself, and therefore because of all these, there was crisis not only at the social level but also at the political and economic level. So we can understand, because Charles Fourier, along with Saint Simon, they lived around the same time when there was the French Revolution in France, as well as the Industrial Revolution in England. Charles Fourier was very concerned about what was happening in England as well, in the United Kingdom at that point of time, because he says that the industrial system has been so mean, especially to the working class, therefore making their living condition an extremely dangerous condition for people to prosper. There was stiff competition, and because of the stiff competition, immoral practices was the means for people to actually develop themselves or to move in social mobility. So he was very concerned about all these things, and therefore, as part of his effort to change the outlook of how the society actually can develop, how people can prosper, how society can benefit from social political development, he envisioned a society, a community in the form of, as I said earlier, phalanx. A phalanx form of community and association based on the idea of passion, the passional attraction. So therefore, now we come to Charles Fourier, as I told you, fundamental human passions. Charles Fourier believed that there are 12 fundamental human passion, and therefore he desired to put them into practice, as I said, in his envisioned society or model called as the phalanx. One very important thing that I would like to mention here is that Charles Fourier is a bit, obsessed with the question of numbers. So therefore, he proposes, for example, I said, 5 passions, 5 senses, 4 souls, and then 3 distributive passions. Then he will say there are 810 types of personalities. So he's all through he is a bit obsessed with numbers. Sometimes because of these numbers, his thought were not taken seriously by many people. But otherwise, some of his ideas are in many ways, although utopian in nature, but in many ways they are significant to the development of the idea of socialism. So, as I said, let me come back. Charles Fourier identified 5 fundamental human passions. So he says 5 of the 12, they are of senses. For example, touch, taste, hearing, sight, and smell. These are human passion. Touch. People definitely would like to touch something or the other, taste something or the other. They constantly hear something, they constantly see something, and also they smell something. So these are the 5 passions which were based on the human senses. Then he says there are 4 type of passion based on soul, on desire of human being. Like every human being desire for friendship. Every human being desire for love. Every human being, Charles Fourier believed, that has some ambition. And every human being, has some kind of, respect for parenthood. So, of the senses, 5 senses: touch, taste, hearing, sight, and smell, and of 4 of the soul, which means the inner human desire, that is friendship, love, ambition, and parenthood. And then there are 3 another kind of passion, which he called them as distributive, which also ensured the balance of all others. So in his phalanx, he want to experiment all these, especially the 3 important distributive passions, which I will explain later. So in his phalanx composed of both male and female, and he says that people should be divided into units in number of 810. 810 because Charles Fourier also believed that there are 810 types of personalities. There are 810 types of characters of human being. And therefore he believed that through these 810 personalities or characters, natural interaction would automatically result in peace and harmony. Since people there are 810 characters of people, so different characters will combine together. Different characters will get attracted to each other. Since there are no there are no 2 similar characters, each character will be comfortable with one another. So therefore he says this will lead to natural interaction, which automatically will result in peace and harmony. So in these communities, he says the status of manual labor would be eliminated by making work enjoyable and satisfying. We will discuss about how he is going to do that a little later. But in the phalanx, Charles Fourier proposes that everyone should be doing something, should be contributing to the effort of producing, so that production can be shared among the requirements of people, so that everybody will have what they need. So some may be weaving, some may be cultivating, some may be harvesting, some may engage themselves in animal husbandry, Others may engage themselves in construction and so on and so forth. So all of them would be helping one another because they would be doing their own job, their own work. So Charles Fourier is he also advocated for the emancipation of women, and he is the person who coined the word feminism in French, féminisme, in 1837. So, uh, so therefore, now let us talk about the three distributive passions. Of course, the eight passions are self-explanatory. One is the senses, the other is the soul, which is spiritual. Now, what are the three distributive passions? These are important, and some of the ideas shared by Charles Fourier, let me say from the beginning, maybe sort of you may find them as derogatory, but for the purpose of our understanding, we have to discuss those. So, among the first distributive passion, the first that Charles Fourier talk about refer to love of variety. Love of variety. So, through this, what Charles Fourier is trying to say is that everyone would be bored if he is to do the same thing over and over again. If he's going to wear the same clothes over and over again. If he's going to watch, for example, suppose now I'm sending you this video 100 times and I ask you to watch 100 times, certainly you will be bored. So, in the same way, Charles Fourier also pointed out that workers quickly get tired of one kind of task. He says, just as lovers, in spite of their initial attraction, they may at some point of time, get bored with this same exercise over and over again. So therefore, Charles Fourier, he held Christianity in deep contempt, or he accused Christianity because it made people feel guilty when they pursued their natural desire for variety in work or in other things. So therefore, what Charles Fourier is trying to say is that Christianity is responsible to make people less productive, because Christianity is also promoting ideas like those of Adam Smith and others, who talk about the division of labor, and in the process therefore force people to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So, for example, why he is accusing Christianity, he says that, for example, you may offer prayer and you repeat a prayer again and again. So, it sort of getting bored. Similarly, Christianity, for example, insists upon individuals that marriage is a sacrament or an institution and one cannot get out of it. So he says all these are imposition. So for the same reason, as I said, he also hated Adam Smith's vision of society of specialists, because by doing so, Adam Smith is propagating the idea that people should do the same thing over and over again in the name of division of labor, and therefore people will get bored of doing the same job again and again. So, whatever the productive advantages of Smith's liberal political economy of labor, the fact remains that according to Charles Fourier, that it created only stunted or repressed human being. A human being will become stunted, or they will just do things for the sake of doing. Otherwise, they have no passion of doing those things. Society, he says, should strive to eliminate all tedious and unpleasant job. It should be able to eliminate, unpleasant learning, boring learning, tedious learning, if possible, and to do without derived from such labor. So if any product is produced because of the labor or repeated labor of one individual, these should be, these should be done away with. These should be discarded because of the love of variety. That's why you see Charles Fourier in his phalanx, he proposed that one individual can do several jobs in a day. For example, he may start with cleaning the toilet, then he can go on to farming, then he can go on to, job of a mason, then he can go on to, producing clothes or textiles in one day. And Charles Fourier also talks about, passion of children, which he says children should be allowed to do things what they want, and in that way they will benefit the society. So he says that children have the habit of, wasting the time in the dirt. So by allowing them to engage themselves in the dirt, let them do the dirty jobs, and in some way that will also help the society. The society will be benefited from the childhood's play. So that is, a sort of weird ideas, but yet important for the purpose of production and political economy. So, so therefore, the second of the distributive passion is what Charles Fourier, calls in French as the la cabaliste, or which refer to, rivalry and conspiracy. He said this is a very important passion. You know, while in the previous societies, these passion may have caused many problems, yet in his envisioned phalanx, in his society, in his proposed society, it would be put into good use, because productive teams would compete with one another to produce the most delicious, for example, the most delicious peaches, or the best pair of shoes, or the best designed clothes. And for the need to compete would satisfy the natural passion for them. Competition should not be for commercial purpose, for not be, to produce more things, but rather to compete with others so as to make them do things more efficiently. So therefore, this natural passion of men, which is based on rivalry and conspiracy, he says, if put into good use, is always beneficial. So therefore, the harmful aspect of competitive commerce and civilization would not be reproduced, because production would keep the overall good of society in mind, not just the market, but the good of the society. So rather than encouraging individual profit, he says in the market, this kind of social competition is beneficial. Finally, the another distributive passion, which Charles Fourier considered as the most beautiful of all, and of course it's difficult to translate in reality. It is called in French as la composite, which seems to mean a combination of two or more different varieties of passion. The sharing of a good meal, a good senses, and in a good company, while conspiring to arrange for some kind of pleasure. So this desire or this passion of people to sort of share something nice that they have in good company will help them also to will also help them in developing desire and arrange something which is pleasurable, and in many ways, so which before that may not exist in their mind, or it may not be part of their activity. So therefore, he through this he tried to suggest some special, suggest some of the special interests of people or individual, or people of, like, what Saint Simon called men of imagination. So in this way, we can say that Charles Fourier, he was an ardent advocate of, self-liberalization, the idea of self-liberty, the idea. He was a staunch defender of, even for that matter, sexual preferences. He had no problem with, you know mm, homosexuality, and other things. So he is that kind of person. So he's what is important for him is passion, somebody passionate about something. So so therefore, this may not be accepted by religion or society at some point of time, yet he believed that the only uh, activity that could be forbidden involve pain or force. If you force somebody, if somebody wants to do something and you force that person not to do that, then that is pain or force. So therefore, you can say that what Charles Fourier is trying to propagate is ultimate liberty. Ultimate liberty based on passion, based on passion. As I said from the beginning, Charles Fourier was also a radical feminist, and he considered the position of women in society as a form of slavery. So, in one famous passage, he set down that the level of any civilization could be determined by the extent of to which women had been liberated. He says that the level of any civilization can be determined by the extent to which women have been liberated. On the other hand, Charles Fourier also did not advocate the equality of sexes, for the simple reason that there were real differences between the sexes. He, of course, rejected patriarchy and feminine condition in the phalanx, and were based on a structure entirely unknown to the Western civilization. He believed that the existing family structure was partly responsible for the subjugation of women. He believed that, this family system, the family system force women to only confine themselves to daily chores, taking care of children, and so on and so forth. So therefore, he says that in order to liberate women, children should be kept aside. In what is called today as the crèche. Children should be kept separately, and they should be allowed to, engage in a crèche, so that they would be able to understand the nature of society they lived in. It is a form of what is known in the tribal society as a bachelor's dormitory or spinster's dormitory. So, which means training them about social requirements, about society, right from early age. Uh, as I said, Fourier's vision, together with his criticism of the existing system, places him as one of the most inspired prophets, or most inspired philosophers of the 19th century socialism. So we can also say that he has a remarkable psychological insight, and therefore, championing belief that is far beyond what the society could actually accept at that point of time. So Charles Fourier can also be described, therefore, as a brilliant exponent of the idea of alienation. When he talk of women emancipation, he certainly exponented, or he propagated the concept of alienation, how women are being alienated from themselves when they are engaged in their daily chores and running the family rather than engage in their own passion. So this is a concern which will be fully developed by Mark, and we will be discussing in that particular unit. So therefore, as I said, Charles Fourier sometimes may sound nonsensical, yet uh, at other times, Charles Fourier ideas mark some sense of, some sense of uh, uh, a deep understanding of society, social relationship, and therefore socialism itself, and therefore alongside the more advanced ideas of Karl Marx, we can say that Charles Fourier is one of those who inspired these, methodological scientific approaches that would be developed by the Marxist scholars later. So, with this, let me conclude my lecture by saying that Charles Fourier is another, you can say, another utopian philosopher, a socialist philosopher, who is concerned about, again, restructuring of society based on passion, and how passion actually can bring about social harmony. Okay, thank you very much.